The only sound in the abyss was the mournful creak of metal under pressure. Ryan, a weathered human salvage diver and former emergency responder, felt every vibration through the battered hull of his deep-sea vessel, the Abyss Runner, as he plunged 5,000 meters beneath the surface of the planet Vera's endless ocean. His gloved fingers danced over corroded controls, compensating for every shudder as cold, brine-black water closed around him. The pressure down here was enough to fold steel like paper. Old memories pressed in just as tightly, flashes of panic alarms, swallowed hulls, lives he'd failed to save. He gritted his teeth and forced them away. The past was an anchor, and he was here for a future payday. He checked his oxygen, scanned his instruments, and focused on the mission. His assignment was simple on paper: infiltrate the wreck of the Zephyrian diplomatic cruiser, the Luminara, and extract its encrypted memory core. The official story said navigation error. His underworld contact, Kess, told a different tale, hinting at a fortune the Zephyrians would pay for silence and discretion. Ryan hadn't asked questions. He needed out. Just one last job, and then he'd disappear. A tremor rolled through the Abyss Runner as his scanners pinged. There, ahead. The Luminara loomed on the display, a fractured spectral shell wedged deep in a jagged chasm. A dull radiance bled from its wounds, painting the water with streaks of phosphorescent blue and violet. Ryan guided the sub forward, using the robotic arms to brush aside drifting panels and shattered glass. Drowned Zephyrians drifted by, their bodies caught in the slow ballet of the deep, faces serene, hair floating like dark kelp, their uniforms torn and shimmering in the glow. He tried not to look at them. Instead, he zeroed in on the core housing, a thick-walled vault clinging to the heart of the ruined ship. "Almost there," he muttered, more to break the silence than anything. The Abyss Runner's manipulator claw extended, its pincers trembling as he navigated the debris. Alarms flickered on his screen, unstable reactor readings, pressure spikes. The Luminara wasn't going to last long. Suddenly, a pulse of amethyst light flickered from a side compartment, catching his eye. Something alive? He hesitated, torn between greed and the muscle memory of rescue. "Don't be stupid," he whispered, but his hands moved anyway, guiding the sub closer to the source. Through a fractured viewport, he saw her, trapped beneath a collapsed support beam, her skin shimmering with iridescent hues that shifted as the light played over her. Long, dark, wavy hair drifted around her face, and at her temples, neural lights pulsed softly. Her eyes, half-lidded, were deep violet, almost impossibly beautiful. Royal insignia adorned her ruined uniform. He swore, the sound swallowed by the sub's close walls. Of course. Has to be a damn princess. The last thing he needed was a living witness, especially one this important. But the part of him that once wore the responder's badge roared to life. He wouldn't leave her. He maneuvered the sub as close as he dared, locked the controls, and pulled on his suit. The airlock hissed open. Cold water bit through the seals as he forced his way into the wreck. He fought the pull of the current, the deadly chill, the urge to turn back. He wedged himself under the collapsed beam, bracing with his shoulder, and grunted, "Hang on, don't die on me now." She stared at him, dazed. Her lips moved, a musical language spilling forth, but he couldn't understand. The neural lights at her temples flickered faster. He wedged a hydraulic spreader beneath the beam. Metal groaned, then gave way. She slid free, collapsing into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, cool and impossibly light, her skin gleaming with subtle color shifts in the emergency lights. "Come on, princess," he urged, dragging her through the corridor as the reactor alarms built to a fever pitch. "We're running out of time." He barely made it back to the sub, slamming the hatch shut behind them. He secured her to a medberth, overriding safeties, then powered up the engines. He rocketed the Abyss Runner away from the dying cruiser, cursing as debris battered the hull. The reactor's death scream followed them, a pulse of light, a shockwave that tore through the water, obliterating the Luminara in a silent, cataclysmic bloom. The sub bucked, systems flickering, but they outpaced the explosion by heartbeats. He broke the surface into chaos. Storm winds battered the hull. Lightning forked overhead, and rain hammered the viewport in sheets. He dragged her inside, struggling against the pitching deck. Her form was impossibly light, cool even through the suit, as if she was made of silk and starlight. He laid her beneath the harsh cabin lights. Now that he saw her clearly, he felt a lurch in his chest. Her alien beauty was breathtaking. Skin shifting through subtle colors, eyes wide and bottomless as twilight, neural lights at her temples glowing with each breath. He knelt beside her, hands trembling as he checked her for injuries. Blood oozed from a gash above her brow. He sealed it, cleaned the wound, worked to steady his own breathing. She stirred, lashes fluttering. Her gaze snapped to his, sharp and aware. She spoke first in her native tongue, voice lilting and strange. Then, almost seamlessly, she switched to Galactic Standard, her accent musical. "You rescued me." He nodded, unable to find words. With regal composure, she pressed her palm to his chest, her fingers cool and sure. "By the ancient code of Zephyra, a life saved is a life owed. I, Princess Lyra of House Veyron, claim yours in return. You are now my Corinth." He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Before he could react, the thunder of engines tore through the storm. Zephyrian skimmers, sleek and iridescent, descended in a sudden swarm. Beams of light lanced through the rain, silhouettes moving with military precision as they landed on the battered deck. The hatch slammed open. Zephyrian guards, faces masked, weapons drawn, surrounded them. One barked orders, the syllables sharp and unfamiliar. Princess Lyra raised herself, regal even in her weakness. "My family is gone," she announced, her voice steady. "I am the last of House Veyron. Secure my property. He is to be brought to the capital unharmed." Rian's protests died in his throat as rough hands seized him. They stripped him of everything but his life and hustled him aboard a skimmer. He caught a final glimpse of the Abyss Runner, his last tie to freedom, before the hatch closed. They plunged beneath the waves, engines humming. Through the viewport, Ryan saw the Zephyrian capital unfurl, a city of living crystal and coral, radiant and strange, rising from the darkness in impossible spires. Awe warred with dread. The city was beautiful. It was also a prison. Rian's new life began in silence. Surrounded by silent guards, he was led through hallways of shimmering stone to a cell more lavish than any home he'd known, yet still a cage. He sat on the edge of a strange, soft bed, hands shaking, heart pounding. He was no longer a rescuer, not even a man. He was a possession. On the second day, Ryan was summoned to Lyra's private chambers. 2 silent guards flanked him, their crystalline armor refracting the prismatic light of the corridor. The door slid open without a sound, revealing Lyra standing tall at the center of her domain. She wore flowing silver robes that glimmered like liquid moonlight, her dark hair swept back and adorned with iridescent stones that caught every movement. Her posture was regal, chin high, eyes unreadable. Beside her stood a man in deep indigo, tailored robes, taller than Ryan, with elegant bone structure and an air of practiced arrogance. Lord Terran, Ryan remembered from the whispered gossip among the servants, her intended. His gaze was cold, scanning Ryan from head to toe with thinly veiled disgust. "This is the primitive who dragged you from the wreck?" Terran scoffed, voice sharp as broken glass. Lyra's lips barely twitched. "He smells of survival, Terran. Something you may never understand." Her eyes flicked over Rian, studying him like a puzzle she meant to solve. You are my Corinth. You will obey. Rian straightened, jaw clenched. He met her gaze head-on, defiance flickering just behind his eyes. I hear you? Terran's nostrils flared. If he oversteps? He will not. Lyra interrupted, steel in her voice. See yourself out, Terran. For a moment the nobleman hesitated, glancing from Lyra to Ryan as if weighing some unspoken warning. Then he spun on his heel and strode out, robes sweeping behind him. The guards closed the doors, leaving Lyra and Ryan alone in the hush of her quarters. Lyra's gaze lingered on Ryan. You will serve in my household, pour nectar when I ask, stand where I command, run my errands. Do you understand? Ryan nodded, fists tightening at his sides. Crystal clear. So began the ritual of humiliation. He poured sparkling nectar into her cup, his hand steady even as her courtiers watched with veiled amusement. He stood at attention for hours, a living ornament, always within sight but never addressed. He fetched her messages, retrieved forgotten trinkets, waited in silence as the royal household bustled around him. Everything was designed to remind him of his place, her property, no more. Yet, as the days unfolded, the world behind Lyra's mask began to slip through the cracks. Once, as he refilled her glass, he noticed her hand tremble, just for a heartbeat, before she hid it in the folds of her robe. Another time, he glimpsed her standing alone before the wide crystal window, shoulders bowed, eyes distant and shimmering with sorrow. Sometimes, after a particularly grueling audience or ceremonial function, she would retreat to her private alcove, and Ryan would hear nothing but silence for long minutes, silence thick with a loneliness he recognized all too well. He saw her strength, yes, the commanding presence, the cold authority. But in quiet moments, he saw the pain too. The rituals of dominance became their own strange intimacy. He was close enough to feel her pulse through the air, to sense her exhaustion, to catch the rare, unguarded expression as she let the mask slip. He wondered how many people, if any, truly saw her. One evening, after a day of endless ceremonies, Lyra dismissed her attendants with a wave. The silver doors slid shut and she turned to Ryan. Follow me. Her voice was soft, almost reluctant. He obeyed, trailing her through winding corridors to a chamber lined with crystalline armor and weapons. Her mother's armory, he realized, from the engravings on the walls. In the center stood a pedestal, holding a suit of ceremonial armor, crystalline plates, delicate yet unyielding, shimmering with pale light. Lyra paused, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the armor. I require assistance. The assembly is intricate. Her voice was quieter, stripped of command. Ryan nodded, stepping closer. He took the first plate, its surface cool and impossibly smooth. Show me. She guided his hands. Here, this clasp. There, align the lattice just so. Her skin, bare where the armor did not cover, was iridescent under the lights. He worked carefully, sliding each piece into place, fastening the hidden catches, his fingers brushing the neural lights at her temples. They pulsed at his touch, a ripple of color shifting beneath her skin. Their movements slowed. The air thickened between them, each breath heavy with something unspoken. Ryan's hands lingered as he fastened the final plate. He looked up, meeting her gaze. For a heartbeat, her authority faltered. Vulnerability and longing flashed in her eyes. His own defenses cracked, skill and trust bridging the gulf between them. Thank you, she whispered, voice barely more than a breath. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. For a moment, master and property faded. Something new and fragile bloomed, a connection that neither dared name. After that night, a shift occurred. Lyra trusted him more than she admitted. She summoned him to her study, the doors sealed for privacy, and granted him access to the Luminara's raw data logs. "You are clever," she said, almost grudging. "See if you can find what our engineers could not." Rian spent days hunched over the glowing interface, his own battered tools spread across the desk. The Zephyrian data was dense, encrypted in layers, but he'd made a career out of unraveling secrets. He cross-referenced the logs, searching for anomalies, power fluctuations, hull stresses, anything that could explain the disaster. The breakthrough came one sleepless night. He replayed the ship's final moments over and over until he saw it. A perfectly timed resonance pulse, so subtle it barely registered in the logs. It had triggered just as the Luminara reached crushing depths, sending vibrations through the hull, enough to compromise the reactor. No system malfunction, no navigation error. This was sabotage, a weapon engineered to destroy the ship and everyone aboard. His pulse pounded as he gathered his evidence, compiling the data fragments into a single, undeniable truth. He couldn't stay silent. He couldn't let her grieve a lie. Ryan slipped out of his quarters that night, avoiding the guards with the ease of a man used to moving where he shouldn't. He found Lyra alone in the observatory, silhouetted against the endless shimmer of the city's crystal towers. He cleared his throat. "Princess, I have to show you something." She turned, startled at first, but her expression softened when she saw the urgency in his eyes. "You left your cell." Bold. He held out the datapad. "I know what happened to the Luminara. It wasn't an accident." He launched into the explanation, laying out the evidence, the resonance pulse, the way it was timed to hit at maximum depth, the precise signatures that matched no known Zephyrian technology. She listened in silence, her face composed, but her hands clenched white around the balcony rail. When he finished, she took the pad from him, scrolling through the logs herself, reading each line as if searching for some mistake. Finally, her composure shattered. Her eyes filled with a storm of grief and fury, violet and wild. Who would do this? Her voice broke, the mask of royalty slipping away to reveal a daughter, a sister, the last survivor of a murdered house. Rian met her gaze, his voice gentle but firm. "Someone who wanted you all gone." She stared at him, breath ragged, pain etched deep into every line of her face. For a moment there was no distance between them. No master, no servant, only two souls standing on the edge of something vast and uncertain. In that moment, a new bond was forged. No longer master and property, but allies against a hidden foe. Their partnership deepened in secret. By day, Rian remained her obedient Corinth, moving through the palace's crystalline halls with silent efficiency, enduring the sharp edge of Terran's scorn and the council's cold suspicion. He poured nectar in court, stood sentinel by Lyra's throne, and ran errands beneath the withering gaze of Zephyrian nobility. Whispers followed him. Primitive, salvage, outsider. Terran's words carried the loudest venom. "Careful, princess," Terran sneered one morning as Ryan set a data tablet on the council's dais. "You coddle your pet too much. Soon he'll forget his place." Lyra's eyes never left the council. "My Corinth remembers better than most here," she replied, her voice icy and calm. Rian bowed and retreated, hiding his smirk. By night, in shadowed alcoves and the silent observatory, their real work began. They pored over schematics and data logs, their hands brushing across glowing screens, voices low and urgent. Ryan taught Lyra the physics of sabotage, how resonance pulses could shatter even Zephyrian alloys, how sabotage hid itself in the noise of 1,000 systems. "Here," he said one night, guiding her hand across the simulation interface. "See this spike? A natural fluctuation would resolve, but this, This is deliberate. Someone set it to detonate at maximum stress. Lyra leaned in, violet eyes intent. You're certain? I've seen this before. Someone wanted your family dead. Their fingers lingered over the controls, the silence between them dense and electric. Sometimes her hand would find his, their skin meeting in secret, their breaths mingling in the dark. As the days passed, Lyra's respect for Ryan's knowledge grew undeniable. She began to challenge her counsel openly, wielding new insight with a precision that left the others scrambling to keep up. It is not tradition, but science, that will reveal the traitor, she declared one afternoon, her words echoing through the chamber. The council murmured uneasily, glancing at Ryan with renewed wariness. Terran's mask of civility began to slip. His eyes narrowed when Lyra countermanded his suggestions. He grew bold in his contempt, his jealousy barely contained. One night, as Lyra and Ryan huddled in her private study, reviewing intercepted communications, Terran barged in without warning. The door hissed open, his silhouette rigid in the threshold. "What is this?" Terran demanded, voice sharp as a blade. "You conspire with him, alone, at night?" Lyra moved swiftly, sliding the evidence pad into a hidden compartment. "You overstep, Terran. I am not to be questioned in my own chambers." His lips curled. "The council will hear of this. They will hear what I choose to tell them. Leave us." Terran lingered a fraction too long, eyes burning with accusation, before storming out. The doors sealed behind him, but the echo of his intrusion lingered. Adrenaline thudded in Ryan's veins. He stepped close, breath unsteady, eyes searching Lyra's. He suspects? He suspects much, knows little. Her voice was quiet, brittle. Ryan's hand rose, hesitated, then gently traced her cheek. Lyra stilled, her breath catching, eyes fluttering shut at his touch. For a heartbeat, everything broke. The careful boundaries, the mask of command, the peril hemming them in. He leaned in, lips finding hers with desperate hunger. She responded fiercely, fingers fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss was a collision, fierce and hungry, two worlds meeting and breaking apart. When they finally separated, the air trembled between them. Lyra pressed her forehead to his. "You are mine, Ryan. You exist because I will it." He smiled, breathless. "And you, princess, because I choose it." Their affair became a secret blaze, reckless and bright for all its danger. In the palace's hidden gardens, beneath the canopy of glowing fronds, Lyra commanded him to kneel. "Swear to me," she whispered, lips brushing his as he obeyed, "that you belong to me." He did, with words and touch, the paradox of his submission making her power all the sweeter. Yet their bond was more than passion. The investigation continued, driven by urgency and dread. Ryan worked through endless nights, tracing the resonance weapon's energy signature back to its origin. Each layer of encryption fell, each false lead narrowed. Finally, he found it. A unique heat pattern, a trace of the rare alloys used only by the warrior caste's forges. Ryan met Lyra in the shadowed vault of the archives, voice low. "It's not just sabotage. The weapon was built here, by your own people." Lyra's eyes widened. "Who?" He hesitated. "Matron Sira. The warrior caste forges, she controls them. And Terran. The logs show his authorization code on the day of the shipment." Lyra went still, features drawn taut. "My intended. My betrayer." Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth. "Syra was always ambitious, but to do this? Your family, the council, all swept aside for power," Ryan said. "Terran stands to inherit everything if you're gone." Lyra's composure hardened into resolve. "He will not succeed. Not while I draw breath." But there was no time to celebrate their discovery. The rite of the abyss, a sacred ceremony at the volatile vent fields, approached, a tradition meant to bind the royal blood to the spirit of Vera. All the city's power would gather there. Ryan, poring over seismic data, realized the site was primed for disaster. He called Lyra to the observatory, urgency in his voice. I checked the vent field readings for the ceremony. There are energy signatures. Too regular. Too strong. It's another setup, Lyra. They mean to finish what they started. She stared at the data, her hands shaking. The council will not listen to me. I'm Salvage. They'll dismiss this as paranoia, or worse. But the pattern matches the Luminara exactly. She turned away, anguish clouding her features. I cannot disobey the right. The council would see it as weakness. Ryan stepped forward, voice fierce. Trust me, not tradition, not your council, me. I won't let them kill you. Her eyes met his, stormy and uncertain. What if I am wrong to trust you? He took her hands in his, grounding her in the moment. If you're wrong, then I'll pay the price. But I know what I see, Lyra. You must believe me. A long silence stretched between them, heavy with fear and hope. At last she nodded, resolve flickering in her eyes. We do this together. Our way. Their plan was set, forged in the heat of danger and the quiet strength of trust. Ryan would be her shield in the shadows, Lyra her own sword in the light. Whatever the council or the abyss threw at them, they would face it as one. The royal sub, the Deep Seraph, descended toward the vent fields, a sleek vessel of luminous alloy and crystalline shielding, its engines a quiet hum against the mounting pressure. Lyra sat in the command chair, clad in ceremonial armor that shimmered with layered crystal plates, her features set in regal composure. At her side, Ryan manned the controls, his eyes flicking between the sub's ancient Zephyrian readouts and the battered human gadgets he'd rigged to supplement them. Behind them, Terran and a pair of armed royal guards watched, eyes sharp, nerves taut. Terran leaned closer, voice pitched low. Strange to trust a salvage rat at the helm of a royal vessel, Princess. Are you certain you would not rather I pilot us safely to your destiny? Ryan ignored him, fingers steady on the guidance stick. I know these fields better than anyone, unless you'd prefer we all end up in the lava. Lyra's gaze never wavered. Ryan is my Corinth. He steers. That is final. The Deep Seraph plunged into the darkness, its lights cutting a path through clouds of superheated water and rising columns of volcanic gas. Vents flared all around, casting the seafloor in eerie blues and reds. Ryan guided the sub through the labyrinth, bypassing unstable crags, reading the telltale signs of shifting currents. Every so often, a tremor would rattle the hull, and Terran would flinch, shooting daggers with his eyes. They reached the heart of the vent fields, where the ceremony would unfold. The ancient altar rose from the stone, an obsidian platform ringed by swirling eddies of molten water. Lyra stood, the crystalline armor catching stray beams of light as she stepped forward. The guards took their positions, Terran lingering near the power console, watching with predatory patience. Lyra drew a deep breath and began the ancient chant, her voice resonant and clear even through the hull's filtered comms. Ryan watched her, caught between awe and dread. The old Zephyrian words hung in the water, vibrating through the metal, a song of legacy and sacrifice. His eyes flicked to the resonance scanner, one of his own battered human devices wedged awkwardly among the pristine Zephyrian panels. A sudden spike flared on the readout, a sharp, unnatural pulse, unmistakable. Ryan's blood chilled. The same weapon, the same signature as the Luminara. Terran moved with sudden purpose, hand sliding toward a concealed device at the altar's edge. Ryan's instincts kicked in. He lunged from the pilot's chair, shouting, "Lyra, down!" He slammed into her, sending them both sprawling as Terran activated the trigger. A pulse of energy ripped through the water, invisible and lethal. The vents erupted, fracturing the sea floor with a deafening roar. The deep seraph bucked and shuddered as shockwaves battered its shields, the lights flickering and alarms wailing. Ryan scrambled to the emergency override, slamming his palm against the controls. "Shields to maximum!" "Hold on!" But the sub was being pulled toward a widening chasm, the ocean itself conspiring to swallow them whole. Lyra pulled herself upright, armor battered but unbowed. "The field's collapsing. What do we do?" Ryan grabbed his grappling anchor, a human-made relic, heavy and crude. "Forget Zephyrian tech. Use this. Aim for that outcrop." He tossed the device to Lyra, and she, with quick hands, fired it out the emergency port. The line snaked through the chaos, the anchor biting into solid rock. The sub jolted to a halt, the grappling line straining but holding. Terran stared in disbelief. That's primitive. It cannot hold." "It's holding now," Ryan barked. "And it's the only reason we're not dead." The royal shields flickered, battered by collapsing vents and falling debris. Human grit and improvisation had saved them where Zephyrian elegance had failed. But as the chaos settled, the reality set in. They were trapped. The exit tunnel had caved in, and the sub's life support was draining by the minute. Terran's fury erupted. He drew a plasma blade from his belt, its edge singing with lethal promise. "You've ruined everything!" he shouted, lunging at Ryan. Ryan ducked aside, snatching up a heavy maintenance wrench. Metal clashed with plasma, the confined cabin amplifying every blow. Terran swung wild, rage blinding him, but Ryan fought with the calm of experience. He feinted, caught Terran's wrist, and with a twist disarmed him, the plasma blade clattering to the deck. One punch sent Terran sprawling. The guards hesitated, but Lyra was already moving. She activated her neural lights, the glow intensifying as she barked a command in Zephyrian. "Restrain him! Now!" The guards, faced with the full force of royal authority, obeyed, binding Terran's wrists and disarming his men. Breathing hard, Ryan surveyed the sub's damage. "We're pinned. Main hatch blocked, life support failing. If we wait for rescue, we're dead." Lyra's eyes were steady. "Options?" He pulled up a schematic, tracing a route through unstable lava tubes beneath the vent field. "There's a tunnel system below. Risky. Seismic activity, unstable rock. But if we time it right, we can punch through." "I will pilot," Lyra said, surprising them all. Ryan met her gaze, something fierce and unspoken passing between them. "Then listen to me, every step. Trust my voice." The battered sub released its anchor and dropped into the lava tubes. Lyra's hands danced over the controls, following Ryan's instructions with unwavering precision. The tubes were tight and volatile, molten rock illuminating the darkness in hellish hues. Ryan called out readings, adjusting for every tremor and shift. Lyra matched him move for move, her nerves steady, her faith absolute. Behind them, Terran raged against his bonds. "You will doom us all. Listen to me, princess." She ignored him, her focus unbreakable. "You have no power here, Terran. Your plot ends beneath the waves." At the final barrier, they faced a wall of ancient stone, impassable by any conventional means. Ryan rummaged through his salvage kit, pulling out a battered demolition charge. He glanced at Lyra. "This is old tech. It'll drain the emergency power, but it's all we've got." She nodded once. "Do it." Ryan crawled into the maintenance crawl space, set the charge, and rerouted the sub's remaining power to the ignition circuit. "Brace for impact," he called. The explosion reverberated through the hull, shattering the stone in a burst of molten rock. Water rushed in, but the deep seraph powered through the breach, battered but intact. Ryan scrambled back to the main cabin, grabbing the resonance device from Terran's discarded satchel. a vital piece of evidence that would prove everything. The sub surged upward, battered by debris but rising steadily. They broke the surface beneath the alien stars, the wrecked sub listing in the gentle swell. Lyra slumped in her chair, armor scorched but eyes shining with victory. Ryan slumped beside her, bruised and breathless, the resonance device clutched to his chest. They exchanged a look, a shared promise of justice, and something more. Ahead, the capital waited. Truth their only weapon and hope burning bright in the night. Returning to the capital in the battered Deep Seraph, dragging Terran and his bound guards behind them, Lyra's authority was now unassailable. The city of crystal and coral loomed ahead, its spires reflecting the light of dawn. Dockworkers and sentries paused in shock as the royal sub breached, hissing and battered, the royal banner scorched but flying. Lyra stood at the prow, her ceremonial armor cracked but gleaming. Ryan helped her disembark, keeping a steady hand on the resonance device. Guards fell into formation, whispers rippling through the crowd as Terran was hauled in chains, his face a twisted mask of fury. Within the palace, Lyra strode through the grand halls, every step measured, every eye on her. She summoned the High Council with a single command. "Bring them all! Now!" Her voice echoed with a power no one questioned. Rian walked just behind her throne, silent and watchful, the battered resonance device cradled in his arms like a relic. The council assembled in the great chamber, its vaulted ceiling alive with shifting light. Matron Syra, regal and cold, sat near the center, her gaze unreadable. Terran stood in shackles, his uniform torn. The courtiers pressed close, sensing that history trembled on the edge. Lyra took her seat, the throne high and solitary, the city visible beyond the glass. She let silence hang a moment, letting the court feel the weight of her return. "We convene in crisis," she began, her voice even. "But this is not a crisis of faith or tradition. This is a crisis of betrayal." Gasps fluttered through the chamber. Syrah's eyes narrowed. Lyra spoke, unwavering. "At the right of the abyss, our sacred ceremony was turned into a trap. The vents were sabotaged, just as the Luminara was destroyed. The traitors sit among us." She gestured for Ryan. He stepped forward, the two resonance devices in hand. "This is the evidence," he said, projecting data into the air. Two spectral signatures danced above the chamber. Identical, violent, unmistakable. Both detonations were created by the same technology, engineered sabotage. The energy signatures match, down to the harmonic residue. There is no doubt. Ryan's voice was steady, every word ringing with clarity. This weapon was manufactured in the forges of the warrior caste, under Matron Syra's authority. These logs? He flicked his wrist, scrolling through damning lines of code. "Show Terran's authorization on the day of the shipments." A ripple of shock tore through the council. Eyes darted to Syra, whose composure fractured. She rose, desperate, voice trembling with rage. "You dare accuse me, princess. This outsider, this salvage, poisons your mind with lies." Lyra rose, regal and terrible, neural lights burning at her temples. "It was your ambition that killed my family. Your scheme nearly ended our line. No more." She lifted her hand, and loyalist guards surged forward. Syra made a last wild lunge for the throne, but she was tackled and restrained. Terran tried to shout a warning, but a guard's gauntleted fist silenced him. The council, stunned and silent, watched as the coup unraveled before them. Lyra turned, surveying her court. "Let it be known. My rule is secured not by tradition, but by survival, courage, and the truth uncovered by my ally, Rian, the human who saved me." The chamber erupted in debate, but no one challenged her. The coup was crushed, its architects dragged away in disgrace. In the following days, the capital hummed with rumors, admiration, and, above all, relief. Lyra's legitimacy was no longer just inherited, it was earned. Days later, the coronation approached. The palace was transformed. Luminous banners streamed from the towers, petals drifted through the air, and the council donned their finest regalia. The city's heart pulsed with anticipation. Lyra stood in her private chamber, a gown of shimmering crystal draped over her frame. The matriarch's diadem, heavy with history, rested in her hands, soon to be placed upon her brow. Her neural lights glowed softly as attendants fussed with the final details. Ryan watched from the threshold, hands clasped behind his back, feeling more out of place than ever. Now that the danger was past, he expected to be dismissed, thanked, and forgotten. A tool no longer needed. The ceremony itself unfolded in breathtaking splendor. Lyra entered the hall to a chorus of chimes, walking alone beneath a canopy of light. She climbed the dais and knelt as the council placed the diadem upon her brow. The room erupted in applause, voices rising in praise. Ryan stood in the shadows, chest tight with pride and bittersweet longing. Lyra raised her hand, calling for silence. "Before I accept the crown, there is one decree I must give. One truth the old laws have hidden for too long." The crowd hushed, uncertain. She turned, searching the audience until her eyes found Ryan. "I invoke the ancient law of Corinth, not as a bond of ownership, but as a partnership." She spoke slowly, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "A life restored is not a debt to be paid in servitude. It is a joining of equals. The law does not create a master and a slave. It reveals soulmates." A gasp swept through the room. Ryan blinked, stunned as Lyra extended her hand. "Ryan, step forward." He obeyed, heart pounding, every eye upon him. Lyra took his hand in both of hers, her grip strong and sure. "Once my property, now my consort, my partner, my equal. I claim you before my people, not as a prize, but as a promise." The council was astonished, the court abuzz with disbelief and awe. Lyra's decree shattered generations of tradition in a single, radiant moment. Ryan gazed at her, pride and devotion in every line of his face. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not as Salvage, not as a servant, but as himself. That night, the palace was quiet, emptied of ceremony and pretense. In her private chambers, the ocean stretched beyond the glass, dark and endless. Lyra stood at the window, diadem discarded, hair loose around her shoulders. Ryan came to her, hesitation and wonder mingling in his eyes. She turned, a soft smile lighting her face. "Consort," he teased, reaching to trace her jaw. "Better than Salvage?" She laughed, radiant, her eyes alive with joy. "I can always invent a new title for you, if you tire of that one." He drew her close, their laughter dissolving into quiet intimacy. Their lips met, sealing a bond deeper than any contract, a love forged in the deep, stronger than crown or custom. For the first time, they were simply Lyra and Ryan, equals beneath the stars, their hearts unburdened at last. The capital reeled from the revelations and the queen's unprecedented choice. News of Lyra's coronation and her declaration spread like wildfire, igniting fierce debates in council chambers, marketplace alleys, and sunlit domes of coral. Nobles whispered, courtiers speculated, and the people watched with hungry eyes as Zephyra began to change before their very gaze. Lyra and Ryan navigated a court in flux. The old order, shaken to its core, clung to tradition with trembling hands, but none dared openly challenge the queen who had survived the abyss and the coup, nor the man who had saved her and helped unmask Zephyra's traitors. Their union, impossible only months before, now symbolized a new era. Lyra wore the matriarch's diadem with a steady confidence, her voice sharper and bolder in council sessions. Ryan stood at her side, his stance relaxed, but his presence electric, a living testament to the transformation sweeping through the deep. Ryan, once an outsider, quickly became more than consort. His human ingenuity and blunt practicality cut through centuries of ritualized inefficiency. He walked the echoing halls of the engineering guilds, sleeves rolled up, grease on his fingers, explaining redundancies, fail-safes, and why tradition was no substitute for safety. Zephyrian engineers, at first wary, soon respected his fearless logic. "Your shields are elegant," Ryan said one day, examining a shimmering defense grid. "But one strong resonance pulse and they collapse. Layer them. Add manual overrides. Don't just trust the old algorithms. Test them." A young Zephyrian apprentice blinked at him, then at her supervisor. "He's right. Why didn't we ever—" "Because we never had to," the older engineer murmured, half in awe. Lyra, emboldened by Ryan's partnership, challenged old customs with a calm, relentless force. She met the council's resistance with steel. "If you value Zephyra, prove it. The council will open new seats, earned by merit, not by birth. The days of inherited privilege end today." There were grumbles, threats, and more than a few resignations. But as fresh voices filled the council chamber, scholars, artisans, even a few daring commoners, change swept in like a tide. Lyra forged new alliances with distant city-states, her diplomatic style direct and uncompromising. Where old Zephyrian law had been rigid, she brought fluidity. Where fear had ruled, she demanded courage. Their romance, no longer forbidden, became legend. The story of the human salvage diver and the last princess of Veyron was whispered with awe in every corridor. In public, Lyra's authority was unchallenged. She spoke for her people with clarity and vision, her consort always at her side, a living symbol of trust and transformation. Ryan, once a shadow in the background, now stood at every state function, his gaze steady, his words few, but always cutting through pretense. In private, their passion burned bright as ever. Behind closed doors, they shed the burdens of court, their love fierce, consuming, a safe harbor after every storm. Some nights, Lyra would press her hand to Ryan's chest, her neural lights softly aglow. "Do you ever regret it?" she'd whisper. "All you gave up?" He would smile, rough fingers tracing her cheek. "Never. I left nothing behind that mattered. You are my whole ocean now." Their roles continued to shift, fluid and ever-changing. Sometimes she commanded with royal certainty, guiding their shared destiny. Other times, Ryan led, his practicality grounding her vision, his arms holding her steady when the weight of the crown grew heavy. Their intimacy was a dance, sometimes fierce, sometimes gentle, always equal. One evening, beneath the shifting light of living coral, Lyra leaned into Ryan, her voice a hush against his ear. "You pulled me from the darkness when I was lost in more than water." He drew her closer, his hands gentle on her iridescent skin. "You saved me too. I just didn't realize it until you said my name like it meant something." He kissed her softly, the world narrowing to the warmth between them. Together, they rebuilt Zephyrian society. With Ryan's insight, Lyra restructured the council, opening new positions based on merit. She invited scholars from the surface, artisans from distant domes, even the children of laborers and salvagers. Ryan oversaw the overhaul of city defenses, installing layered shields and backup power drawn from surface solar arrays, practicalities once dismissed as human meddling, now the city's pride. They uncovered further evidence of the old regime's corruption, hidden accounts, secret deals, and the names of co-conspirators buried deep in the palace archives. Lyra presided over public trials, her sentences fair but unflinching. Rian's role grew in the eyes of the people, his reputation evolving from property to consort to hero. He became a bridge between human and Zephyrian, surface and deep, his story inspiring new exchange and understanding. Even the city itself seemed to breathe easier. Market domes buzzed with fresh voices and new ideas. Young Zephyrians and visiting humans mingled in the plazas. For the first time in memory, hope outshone fear. On quiet nights, Lyra and Ryan would retreat to the great window in their private chambers, gazing out at the endless ocean. Sometimes they spoke of the past, the wreck, the rescue, the blood and danger that had forged their bond. Other times, words were unnecessary. Their fingers entwined, Lyra would rest her head on Ryan's shoulder, and he would kiss her hair, letting the silent sweep of the sea wash away the ghosts of old lives. "Do you ever miss the surface?" Lyra asked once, her voice a whisper in the dark. "Sometimes," Ryan admitted. "But I'd never trade this. I belong here, with you." She smiled, her neural lights flickering in the dimness. "You are the bravest man I know." He laughed, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'm only brave because you're with me." No longer captive, no longer lost, they belonged to each other, their bond deeper and stronger than the ocean itself. Together, they shaped a new Zephyra, one built on trust, on unity, on love that had survived the abyss and risen, unbroken, into the light.